Recently, a subscriber sent me this video from Dr. Jaquish, where he mentions that kettlebells are a fad. I'm also going to expand a little bit into the topics that he talks about. He says that weightlifting is a waste of time. He talks about variable resistance. And he also says in the video that he says a lot of controversial stuff. Now, as we know, if you say controversial stuff, this will boost your views. And of course, the doctor has a product that he wants you to buy. So let's dive a little bit deeper, especially into the kettlebell fad thing. And let's see what the good doctor has to say. But before we get started, if you're a man over 40 and you're looking for a kettlebell workout to help you get started on the kettlebell journey, check the first link in the description or type yes in the comments and I'll send it to you straight away. Grüezi miteinander, Gregory von Lebe here. Without further ado, let's jump right into these sections that I think are comment worthy.
If you're 7 times stronger in one position versus the weaker position, where we start off if we're doing some sort of fitness type activity, well, that means weightlifting is a waste of time because a weight stays the same weight. No matter where you are in space, it's the same.
Now, when he says weightlifting is a waste of time, he seems to backtrack that statement a little bit in the comments. In essence, what he's trying to say is that variable resistance is the holy grail when it comes to building muscle. And this works well with the product that he's selling that offers this type of resistance. Compared to barbells, dumbbells, and machines, he says that his equipment, what he's selling, is the most effective way to hypertrophy. Now, without wanting to go too much into detail, because I think I'm not the expert to talk about this matter, I think Dr. Brad Schoenfeld is a way better qualified scientist to talk about this matter. I want to read from Dr. Brad Schoenfeld's book, Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy. He says, mechanical tension appears to be the most important factor in training-induced muscle hypertrophy. There is compelling evidence that the metabolic stress associated with resistance training promotes increases in muscle protein accretion. Research suggests that exercise-induced muscle damage can enhance muscular adaptations, although excessive damage has a negative effect on muscle development. So what Dr. Brad Schoenfeld is saying in essence is that mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage are the 3 primary drivers of muscle growth. As far as I can remember, he doesn't say anywhere in the book that variable resistance, such as Dr. Jaquish is mentioning, is the holy grail to building muscle. My next step was to find out whether variable resistance has some scientific evidence. According to Dr. Jaquish, he has a lot of evidence that he had to submit to the TED guys in order to be able to get this talk. So I went on Google, typed in variable resistance science, and here was an interesting study that I came across. It is from this year, so brand new, and I think it references over 40 studies. And here's the conclusion or the overview of this review. However, the use of variable resistance allows the external load to be adjusted to a muscle's ability to exert force throughout the entire range of motion. This allows for greater efficiency, comfort, and safety for the athlete. However, although the results have been superior, interesting, for variable resistance in terms of muscle mass gain in the different studies, they have not been significantly so in the short, medium term, 8 weeks, and with untrained subjects. After having analyzed the current evidence of this training methodology, it is worth mentioning that the use of variable resistance training is as effective a training method as conventional resistance training.
Everyone wants to exercise. Most people quit. Then they're usually blamed for being lazy, but they're not. They quit because it doesn't work. They quit because they might do a year at a fitness center and then look at themselves in the mirror and be like, well, I look exactly the same.
Now, he says that people are not lazy, and I beg to differ. I don't say that people are inherently lazy and that you're born like this and you can't change it. However, human beings, we always look for the path of least resistance. And we have the shiny object syndrome. We have no patience. So we jump from one thing to the other, and we have no discipline, or we lack the discipline to push through when things get ugly or when we are pushed outside the comfort zone. So that's probably one of the reasons why most people don't stick with the program. However, I agree that many fitness gyms are not effective in helping people change their body and give them a solid transformation. And based upon these facts, we know that people tend to be lazy. So how many people finish reading a book? 48% of adults finished the whole book last year. So 52 didn't. So they started, but it didn't finish it. Another one, despite the lifetime of experience walking under natural conditions, people readily adapted established motor programs to minimize energy expenditure. That's from a study that says we human beings, like I said, we tend to look for the path of least resistance. And I understand it, because if you live in the old days where you had to get ready for the hunt, your body was automated or was designed to work as efficient as possible in order not to burn as much energy, because you don't know whether you're still alive tomorrow if you don't find food to eat or to hunt. Another nail in the coffin why we people seem to be lazy is the completion rate for online courses is between 5 and 15%. So 90% or 95% in some cases do not finish an online course. And you might say, well, but courses are informational material and education, so that's tough. Well, look at this. Industry experts estimate that a new game will only be completed by 10 to 20% of its players.
This is such a powerful intervention. A lot of things come and go. You've been told about a lot of fads. A couple years ago, it was like everybody needs to train with kettlebells. And it was sort of like you look at it and you're like, how is that not just a dumbbell? It is. So, you know, and also nobody cares, and you can't even really find kettlebells around anymore. It was just a fad, and it didn't give anybody any better results. This is the kind of thing, and I'll use an example. I was asked in an interview about 6 months ago. I was on a news show, and somebody says to me, what are your goals for fitness? It was a weird question. Nobody ever asked me before. So I said, well, I plan on having a kid at some point, and I'd really like my kid to look at me like I'm a superhero.
So here we are. Kettlebells are a fad. Now, kettlebells have been around since the mid of the 19th century. So they've been a pretty long fad, if you would ask me. Serafin Luftmann and Felice Napoli were the first strong men, and actually strong women, who started using ring weights, as they were called back then. And it is not a dumbbell. If you train with the kettlebell, you can use it for an almost indefinite amount of time if you use the proper technique. And then you can use it for endurance and explosive training. And that's something that you cannot do with a dumbbell, barbell, or machines. There's always the weakest link in the chain that will give out. And in kettlebells, most of the time, it's the lower back. But if you train this and you make it strong, then you can train for a whole lot of time with kettlebells. And the offset of the weight sits different on your wrist and attached to your frame and your skeleton, which means if you press it overhead, you will have a different effect on your shoulder and your body, because the weight is always pulling away from you. That's not something that happens with dumbbells, barbells, or machines. And he says that you can't find kettlebells anymore. Well, I see that they're ubiquitous, and even Nike is now thinking about, or I think that they're already exploring the idea of creating their own kettlebell, and they call it Nike Strength. So if a big brand like this wants to invest into kettlebells, you see that the demand is still growing, and it is still there. And finally, he says no results. Now, if you listen to what he says at the end, he says, I want to look like a superhero to my kid. Then this to me seems like he wants to look big and massive with a lot of muscle. Now for this, yes, kettlebells are probably not the right tool, but you have to ask yourself and differentiate the question. Well, results for what? Kettlebells build muscle. They train your endurance. They build explosiveness. They improve your fitness. You only need a 10-minute workout, and it takes care of everything, of all the human physical qualities that need to be taken care of for normal average people. And he says that people want to exercise. Well, we actually learned that people are a little bit lazy, so they don't want to exercise. And then, of course, the kettlebell comes in very handy as being the one tool where you don't need to spend a lot of time and get a lot of return on investment. So if you'd ask me, especially when it comes to the kettlebell, the other stuff I think needs to be debated with Dr. Brad Schofield, for example. But even there, you see that there are holes in his theory. To me, it's an uninformed or maybe misinformed opinion. And I get that he wants to sell his product, the X3, and it may be an awesome product to build muscle, which is great, which is awesome. But I don't think it is a good way to talk down on other training modalities and even make them look bad just to sell your own stuff. You can still sell your own stuff and then place it right there where the market has a demand, and you look for a target audience, which is awesome, and then you can point out these awesome benefits that it has, but we cannot walk around and say, well, the barbell doesn't work because I like kettlebells, or I love barbells, therefore dumbbells and machines are stupid. Yes, we can say that there are tools that are optimized for normal average people, which I believe is the kettlebell, to touch all bases of human performance or physical qualities in a very short amount of time, but it doesn't mean that other training modalities do not work. And it also doesn't mean that the kettlebell is the holy grail for everything, because it is not. So here's the next thing that you have to do. Clean and press that like and subscribe button. Share with a friend who's also interested in kettlebells. And if you made it this far, check the first link in the description if you're a man over 40 wanting to get in shape with kettlebell training. I got an awesome beginner's workout right there for you. You can also type yes in the comments and I'll send the workout gladly to you.